Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. You ready to get into some thought-provoking stuff today?
Always.
We are taking a deep dive into the invisible men, unspoken tales of male sacrifice. Have you had a chance to look at this one yet?
I have, and this is a really fascinating one. It's bold, it's provocative. I think it's going to spark a lot of conversation.
Definitely just skimming the chapter titles is enough to pique your interest. We got toxic masculinity, the feminist betrayal, the sacrifice of Job's security.
Yeah, those are just a few.
It doesn't hold back at all.
No, it doesn't. And I think what's really interesting is the core argument of this book is that men are facing this crisis of masculinity and they're feeling overlooked and undervalued because of societal expectations and double standards.
Okay, so let's get into that. What does the book say about toxic masculinity being weaponized?
Well, it argues that this term is often used to shame men and control their behavior.
So they're being told to be strong and assertive.
But then they're criticized for being too aggressive or dominant.
So they can't win.
Exactly. It's like they're held to these really impossible standards. And the book gives this really relatable example. The author talks about a time when his partner texted him to take the trash out while she was out. And he felt like it was a demand, not a request. Highlighting this expectation that men just do these things without complaining.
Oh, I can see how that would be frustrating. It feeds into this idea of men being on call to fulfill these roles.
Exactly, and it ties into what the book says about this hypocrisy of choice. It argues that while women's choices are often celebrated, men's decisions are met with a lot more scrutiny.
Can you give me an example?
Well, the book says that a woman choosing to be a stay-at-home mom is considered empowered, but a man choosing to prioritize family over a career is seen as somehow failing.
Interesting points. It's like there's this unspoken pressure on men to constantly strive for higher status, especially in the context of relationships.
Yeah, and the book goes into how that pressure combined with women's tendency towards hypergamy, choosing partners of higher status can create this feeling of being expendable for men.
Oh, so once they've served their purpose, they're replaced.
Right, and that's a pretty bleak outlook.
Yeah, it is.
It is, but it's important to remember that we're exploring the arguments presented in the book, not necessarily endorsing them.
Yeah, of course. So let's move on to this idea of men feeling invisible. How does the book connect that to the broader themes that we're discussing?
Well, it argues that men's voices are often silenced or dismissed, especially in discussions about gender issues.
So they're expected to just sit there and take the criticism.
Right. They're not supposed to defend themselves or offer a different perspective.
Which must be so isolating. The book argues that men's sacrifices, especially as fathers and providers, often go unnoticed.
Yes, there's actually a whole chapter dedicated to this called The Invisibility of Father. And in it, the author shares his own experiences and observations about how dads are portrayed as bumbling or absent, even when they're actively involved in their children's lives.
So it's like they're damned if they do, damned if they don't.
That seems to be a recurring theme. Yes. And the book also doesn't shy away from connecting these pressures to the rising rates of depression, anxiety, and suicide among men.
Right. It makes sense if you constantly feel undervalued and silenced, like your contributions don't matter.
It takes a toll on your mental health, absolutely. And the book explicitly states that this suppression of emotions and the constant shaming contribute to these mental health challenges. It even argues that men are being actively discouraged from developing their emotional intelligence as if it were some kind of a threat.
So it's like society is telling men to be strong, but not too strong, sensitive, but not too sensitive.
It's a confusing message for sure.
It really is.
And this ties into another key point. The book makes the use of shame as a weapon.
Okay, how does shame factor into all of this?
Well, the book argues that shame is used to control and manipulate men, making them question their identity and their worth.
If they don't conform to these really narrow expectations of what it means to be a man, they're shamed for being toxic or not man enough. It's a never-ending cycle of judgment, and it sounds like the book is saying that this shame has a real impact on men's lives, their relationships, their careers, everything.
It can be incredibly damaging to their self-esteem and their well-being.
So the picture that's being painted here is pretty bleak. Does the book offer any solutions, any hope for men feeling trapped by these expectations?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. The book does offer a path forward, but it's not about denying or suppressing masculinity.
What is it about?
It's about reclaiming it in a healthy and positive way.
I'm intrigued. Let's dive into that in the next part of our deep dive.
I'm happy to. This is where the book really starts to challenge conventional thinking about gender roles and expectations. It's a call to action for men to embrace their strengths and reject those limiting narratives that society tries to impose on them.
So it's about finding a balance between strength and sensitivity.
Yeah, Exactly. And the book spends a lot of time unpacking this concept of disposability. It argues that men are often viewed as expendable, particularly in times of danger or crisis.
Like, they're expected to be the heroes who rush into burning buildings or put themselves in harm's way to protect others, but then their sacrifices are quickly forgotten.
Exactly. It's like society expects them to be brave and selfless, but then treats them as if they're replaceable cogs in a machine.
And it's not just physical danger, right? The book argues that this sense of disposability extends to relationships and families too.
You're absolutely right. It goes as far as to say that women are often encouraged to marry up, seeking partners of higher status, which just reinforces the idea that men are only valuable for what they can provide.
It's like there's this underlying message that men are only as good as their last accomplishment, their last paycheck, their last heroic act.
And once they've served their purpose, they're easily discarded. It's a pretty harsh reality check.
Yeah, it is, but the book doesn't shy away from these uncomfortable truths.
No, it doesn't.
It sounds like a wake-up call for men to recognize their own worth and start challenging these outdated expectations.
Exactly. And that leads us to another really explosive chapter, the feminist betrayal. This is where the book really dives into the idea that feminism, despite its origins in fighting for equality, has become distorted and is now being used to promote female supremacy.
So it's saying that some women are using feminism as a weapon to gain power over men rather than striving for true equality.
That's the argument, yes. And it goes on to say that this has created a hierarchy among women, with those who preach supremacy being seen as the real feminists, while those who advocate for true equality are often marginalized.
So the book is saying that this new wave of feminism is actually hurting both men and women by creating this division and resentment instead of genuine understanding.
That's a fair assessment, and of course it explores the impact this has on men, suggesting that it leaves them feeling demonized and confused about their role in society. It even argues that this has contributed to the rise of the manosphere and the backlash against feminism we're seeing online.
It's like this pendulum swing where things have gone from one extreme to the other, and now we're trying to find that middle ground again.
That's a great way to put it. The book seems to be calling for a more balanced and nuanced approach to gender relations, one that recognizes the complexities and challenges faced by both men and women.
Okay, so we've talked about men feeling shamed, silenced, even betrayed. But what about the impact on their emotional lives? Does the book address that?
It does. There's a whole section dedicated to what the author calls the war on men's emotional intelligence.
Okay.
He argues that society is actively trying to undermine men's ability to think rationally and logically.
Wait, really? Why would society want to do that?
The book suggests that there's been a deliberate push to feminize men, encouraging them to be more emotional and less rational.
And it's saying that this is a bad thing.
The argument is that it deprives men of one of their key strengths and reinforces this stereotype that men are incapable of complex thought or emotional depth. It's like they're being told to abandon their intellect and embrace a more simplistic, feeling-based way of being.
They're being told to be less manly, to be more acceptable.
That's one way to interpret it. And the book warns that this demonization of rational thought is harmful not just for men, but for society as a whole.
How so?
It suggests that it's leading to a decline in critical thinking and a rise in emotional decision-making, which can have serious consequences.
So it's not just about men feeling emasculated, it's about the potential erosion of logic and reason in our culture.
It's a strong takeaway from this section of the book, yes.
So given all of these challenges, what does the book propose men do? How can they reclaim their power and find a sense of purpose in a world that seems to be telling them they're no longer needed?
That's where it gets really interesting. The book doesn't advocate for some kind of retreat into isolation or anger.
Okay.
Instead, it emphasizes the importance of brotherhood and community, finding strength and support in shared experiences.
Like forming groups where men can talk openly about their struggles and support each other.
Exactly. It's about creating safe spaces where men can be vulnerable, share their stories, and challenge those toxic narratives that society has imposed on them. The book also highlights the importance of mentorship, with older men guiding and supporting younger men as they navigate the complexities of manhood.
It sounds like a call for men to reconnect with each other, to build a sense of solidarity and support.
That's a key theme, yes. And it's not about excluding women or creating some kind of men's-only club.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that men have unique needs and experiences that are often overlooked or dismissed in our current cultural climate.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, and The Invisible Men clearly paints a pretty stark picture of the challenges men face in today's society. But it sounds like it also offers a message of hope.
Absolutely. It's a call to action, a rallying cry for men to stand tall, reclaim their masculinity in a healthy way, and fight for their place in the world. It's about recognizing their inherent worth and refusing to be defined by limiting stereotypes or societal expectations.
So if you're a man who's feeling lost, confused, or overwhelmed, this book might be just what you need to start reclaiming your power and finding your voice.
That's a great way to put it. The Invisible Men is a wake-up call, a challenge, and ultimately a message of empowerment for men who are ready to embrace their true selves and create a better future for themselves and for future generations.
It's been an intense journey so far exploring the depths of this book, but we're not done yet.
We're not.
There's still so much to unpack, including the silencing of men's experiences and the invisibility of their contributions.
You're right. Those are crucial aspects of the book's argument, and they really get to the heart of why so many men feel like they're living in the shadows.
So let's dive into those topics in the final part of our deep dive. I'm eager to hear your insights on how we can start to shift the narrative and create a more just and equitable world for everyone. All right, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into the Invisible Men. And we've covered a lot of ground already: shame, betrayal, this sense of being disposable.
Yeah, we've talked about a lot.
But there's one more crucial aspect I really want to get into, and that's the silencing of men's experience.
Yeah, that's a really important point, and it kind of goes hand in hand with this idea of invisibility that we've been discussing.
Right.
You know, the book argues that societal expectations combined with this fear of judgment prevent men from really speaking openly about what they're going through.
It's like they're stuck in this double bind. They're told to be strong and stoic.
Right, so they bottle up their emotions,
In silence.
and then they're criticized for not being in touch with their feelings.
Or for being emotionally unavailable.
Exactly. It's a no-win situation, and the book argues that the silencing has a really devastating impact on men's mental health.
Yeah.
You know, contributing to those alarming rates of depression, anxiety, and even suicide that we talked about earlier.
It's heartbreaking. It's like they're being told to just suck it up and deal with their problems alone, which is never healthy.
No, it's not. And what's even more tragic is that when men do try to speak up, their experiences are often dismissed or ridiculed. Yeah, the book has some really powerful examples of this. Men who are victims of domestic abuse or sexual assault, but their stories are met with disbelief or skepticism.
It's like society has a hard time accepting that men can be victims, especially when it comes to violence or abuse perpetrated by women.
Right. It's like their pain is somehow less valid because of their gender.
So how do we change that? How do we create a space where men feel safe and supported in sharing their experiences, even the painful ones?
Well, the book offers some insightful suggestions, and I think it starts with awareness.
Okay.
You know, recognizing that men are hurting and that their pain is real, and we need to be more mindful of the ways in which we might be contributing to this silence, whether it's through our words or actions or even our unconscious biases.
It's about challenging those deeply ingrained societal norms that tell men they have to be strong and silent, that they can't show weakness or ask for help.
Exactly. We need to create a culture where vulnerability is seen as a strength, not a weakness.
And we need to listen without judgment when men do choose to open up.
Yes, because their stories matter. Their pain is real, and their voices deserve to be heard just as much as anyone else's.
Okay, so that brings us to another crucial aspect of the book, the invisibility of men's contribution.
Right.
So what exactly does the book mean by that?
Well, it's this idea that men's hard work and sacrifices often go unnoticed or taken for granted.
Oh, okay.
Like they're just expected to do certain things, you know, provide for their families, protect their loved ones, fix things around the house, and their efforts are rarely acknowledged or appreciated.
It's like they're working behind the scenes. Their contributions are invisible to the outside world.
Yeah, and that can be incredibly demoralizing.
You really can.
It can lead to feelings of resentment, inadequacy, even anger. Like they're putting in all this effort, but it's not being seen or valued.
And it's not just in the workplace or in their career.
The book gives examples of how this invisibility plays out in families, in relationships, in society as a whole.
So in every aspect of life.
Pretty much, yeah. You know, it talks about fathers who are actively involved in raising their children, but whose contributions are often overshadowed by the mother's role. It talks about men who are doing their best to be good partners and friends, but who feel like their efforts are never quite enough.
So how do we start to change that? How do we start to make men's contributions more visible and appreciated?
Well, the book suggests that it starts with a shift in perspective.
Yeah.
You know, we need to be more mindful of the ways in which men are contributing to our lives and to society as a whole. And we need to make a conscious effort to acknowledge and appreciate their efforts.
It's about saying thank you, expressing gratitude, recognizing the value of their contribution.
Even the small things.
Right.
You know, it's about shifting the narrative from one of expectation and obligation to one of appreciation and respect.
It's about challenging those societal norms that perpetuate this invisibility. We need to stop assuming that men are just supposed to do certain things, and start recognizing their efforts as acts of love, care, and responsibility.
Because at the end of the day, it's about treating men with the same dignity, respect, and appreciation that we expect for ourselves. It's about recognizing that their contributions are just as valuable as anyone else's, and that their presence in our lives enriches us in countless.
So the Invisible Men is calling for a major shift in how we view and treat men in our society.
Absolutely. It's a challenge to examine our own biases, to question our assumptions, and to start seeing men for who they truly are: complex, multifaceted individuals with their own unique strengths, struggles, and aspirations.
It's about moving beyond the stereotypes and seeing the humanity behind the mask of masculinity.
That's a beautiful way to put it, and it's a journey that requires empathy, compassion, and a willingness to step outside of our comfort zones.
So if you're ready to embark on that journey, I highly recommend checking out The Invisible Men. It's a book that will challenge your thinking, provoke your emotions, and perhaps even inspire you to be a part of creating a more just and equitable. For all, you can find it on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books.
It's a great read.
Well, this has been an incredible conversation. Thank you so much for joining me for this deep dive into The Invisible Men.
My pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We hope this has given you a lot to think about and that you'll continue to explore these really important issues in your own lives.